Okay, how about now? I need to hear myself. One, two, three. One, one. Okay, one, two, three. Okay, one, 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 two, three. Okay, one, 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 two, three. Oh yeah, definitely better. Yeah, okay. Uh, I don't know. For me, the audio, at least before I restarted, everything was extremely slowed down. Oh yeah, and as soon as I inserted the buds in, I don't hear anything. I don't know whether it's the same case for you. I hope it's not. Okay, so oh yeah, now okay, now it works. Maybe I've had it muted too much, and at least it's not slowed down. Okay, I hate the camera shake, but that's because I have it like on a tripod on this tower that I have on my desk. But I think we'll have to live with it for now, and maybe I take this into consideration for my next streams. Okay, once again, quick recap. I'm in the second data center my institution owns, like the institution I work at. It's an older site. The site that I've actually been debugging the servers from the latest videos. It's an older one. It's a very old. I mean, compared to IT standards. But it checks out and it's still like operational and still has a lot of cool stuff. I think it mainly works now as basically a second site for backups and as an actual important fiber hub. But yeah, we are here today. I hope I haven't pissed off a lot of you with like the stream restarting. By the way, anyway, any of my colleagues can come in, so be prepared to pause the stream anytime. And like I said, this is something I just wanted to test out. I'll be trying to play around with DeepSeek in the meantime and maybe do some work-related tasks. Oh yeah, I think that before I broke the stream, I told you that I will show you how I run the DeepSeek and what's interesting about it. So yeah, let me just log on to the machine. And I will try and start Olama. Sadly, I cannot fit the 70 billion parameter model on the Quadro GPUs I have like freely available. I think I'll be able to try out the 70 billion model tomorrow on some proper GPU HPC resources we have. But yeah, interestingly, I can show you this. So this is basically an Olama, right? Nothing new here. It's just like run DeepSeek, blah blah blah. The interesting thing is, if I change to here and you will see the NVIDIA SMI, you will see that the model is loaded and actually spread pretty evenly across all of the GPUs I have. So I have 4 Quadro M6000s, and each one of them has 12 gigs of VRAM, and it actually managed to load and spread out pretty evenly. So now, when and let me just maybe fix the camera now. And let me fix my shitty tripod. But if I, let's say, ask it, and I mean, I've had this like interesting idea as to what to ask it, and I really like the chain of thought because, okay, so let's say you are tasked with like coming up with some hardware specifications for a project, right? So somebody asks you to come up with a server that needs to be bought. So let's say, could you recommend a Dell or HP server for a small business? It has to be new and it needs to have AMD CPU. Let's enter. So as it's thinking, because right now it's not really giving me an answer, it's going through the chain of thought. But here, you can see the actual load that's being distributed onto the GPU. So you can see that it's like it's almost halfway there when it comes to its power limits. But you know, actual utilization, the fans are like 30%, so it's nowhere near. The GPU utilization is around like 30%, so it's not really much. I guess like with these things, it's the VRAM that's mostly of the issue. But I really like that it actually, with Llama, the DeepSeek managed to spread itself across all of the 4 GPUs. Because initially, I have tried to run this with a single GPU. So I can like change this pretty easily because this is a VM within Proxmox with GPUs passed through it. And then like, I mean, this was definitely way slower. And we can actually check that in a second after it's done with this. But this is something I'm not yet sure about. How does it work? I mean, whether it's like Llama that does this, or is it like a property of the models that they can spread themselves across all of the 4 GPUs, or how many you will give them? I'm not sure yet, but I hope I will find that out. Oh, so I think it actually is done thinking, and it will now show me an actual answer. Dell PowerEdge XR3. What is Dell PowerEdge XR3? HP ProLiant DL3018 Gen 10 Plus. I mean, let me maybe check. Dell XR3. Does it even exist? Because that is actually a good question. Dell PowerEdge. So is that like a tower? Or is it like hallucinating info? Yes, it says it's a tower server. Interesting. So I might not be like familiar with this. Its second option is like HP ProLiant, and considerations. I mean, sometimes I would say that aside from answer, like the thing it gives you here, I think it's more important to read its chain of thought, especially if you are not familiar with the task you are giving to the AI model, because you might learn more from that. I mean, I do like how from what I've seen, that they do actually try and have a pretty reasonable chain of thought. So what it's been thinking here? So I'm trying to find a Dell or HP server for their small business. The requirement are that it's new and must have AMD CPU. I know servers can vary a lot in terms of specs and use cases, so I think I should think about what a small business might need. The user mentioned, oh, I should probably have added that it's for Proxmox. I'm not sure I said that. It's not, and specifically Epic are good. Not all manufacturers offer. Dell has Power Edge, ProLiant. That's pretty reasonable. Let me think about Dell first. I know Dell Power Edge series is popular for small business because they're relatively affordable and manageable. Dell Power Edge XR3 is a compact server that might support AMD CPUs. The R750XA could also be an option. I should check their specs. HP. Yes, ProLiant. Server need tower rack mounted or something else. That is actually a superb conclusion it came to. Small business might prefer tower servers for ease of setup in an office environment. Rack mounted could be better if there is data center, if they have a data center setup. Budget is another factor. The user didn't specify, but the small business usually look for cost effective. Yep. Storage and expandability are important. SSD, HDDs, yep. I also need to think about management tools. That's another like superb point. Dell has iDRAC and HP has iLO. Warranty and support are important consideration. Good warranty can period, yes, that actually is a pretty important, but I don't think it gave it as much of thought as typically you would. I should also consider the form factor. If the business doesn't have dedicated server room, maybe tower should be more sustainable, more suitable than a rack-mounted one. Yeah, so I think that it actually has pretty reasonable conclusions that it's coming to, because it's actually, I would say it's quite reasonable. I mean, maybe let me check before I say anything. Let me read it to the very end. Lastly, I need to ensure that the recommended servers are indeed in new models as the user specified. So checking release dates or availability. I've said this because I've tried this query before, and it gave me refurbished, suggested me refurbished servers or very old gen servers. So I've tried to avoid that. Putting all together, I should outline two options: one from Dell, one from HP. Specs, blah blah blah. So what I like about this is that it actually spent interesting amount of resources to actually decide whether if it saw that this is for small business, and it actually asked itself a lot of questions whether this should be tower or rack mounted, which from my experience is actually something that, okay, let me fix that back to as it was. It is something that actually, people don't really think about it until they get the servers. And then they're like, oh shit, where will we put it? Or, maybe we have, oh, I think we have a guest. Excuse me. To? Tak. Dobra. Jeszcze nie przeszedł. Spoko. Tylko nie wiem, czy sięgnę. Okay, so I got an important quest from my colleague. I need to plug and unplug the camera. Yep. Yeah, so where was I? Yeah, you've seen me climb up because I needed to dismount and unplug and plug this camera. I mean, I was asked by a colleague, so. Anyway, it is interesting how much time it's spent on thinking on the form factor of the server, based on the single query, and I think this is pretty reasonable. And like I said, you know, many people don't really think about this. Most often the CPU is not really as important. The RAM can be important, and it didn't really spend much time on this at all, but I think if we like asked like additional queries after like reading through this, if we were inexperienced admin, that would definitely help us. And I really like the chain of thought thingy. Okay, now, just to show you, maybe let's try and actually run this on a single GPU instead of 4 GPUs. So once again, I can, oh my god, I can go to the VM and I can actually show you the process. Just give me a second. I can go to the VM. It is right here, but instead of like pushing Control D, I wrote exit. So now I'm waiting for it to actually perform my query, or maybe screw it. We'll just shut it down. Because right now, as you can see, we have 4 GPUs mapped. I've actually mapped the resources on the server, so now it's just as simple as, oh, is that an update? I'm pretty sure I did an update yesterday. So I don't remember where was that, but I do remember somewhere here you could like map resources. I can't for the love of me remember where. Resource mappings. Yep, okay. So, you know, just as LSPCI would tell you. So now that we have it here, we can remove all of those 3, and you will see now how much slower everything becomes. So yeah, let's give it a second before it starts up. Back again. Good day, streamer. Good day, chat. How is Samiyakif? I think I'm reading this right. Once again, I have this issue where I am not seeing the chat on the phone. Okay. I should maybe fire up the old reliable just to see the chat constantly, because I really don't want to miss your messages. I'll just take it here so you won't see my password. Okay, so I will close this here. Howdy, what's compiling? We are trying to run the whatever it's called, the deep whatever model, and I'm trying to. I'm actually showcasing how it's nicely working and it actually spreads around multiple GPUs if you have this without any NVLinks or whatever. I'll show this in a second, but I just want to have a stream playing on my second laptop just so I am sure I see all the comments, because they do disappear fairly quickly on the phone. Let me just mute the laptop. And I'm almost done, just 1 second. Hooray. I mean, yeah, so the AI, I mean, it is kind of a buzzword. Which model? So those I have are pretty much the GPUs I am doing right now are, you know, pretty old and legacy. Those are Quadro M6000, and I think that yep, the VM spooled itself back up. So let me show you. Shit. Why I can't switch to the back camera? What the fuck? It worked like Jesus. It worked like a second ago. What the hell? Shit. So we'll do this the old way. Right? I'm not sure you see anything. I'll try to see this on the screen preview. So we've gone down from 4 GPUs to 1. Okay, so this is also like a mirror image, so you don't see shit. So you can't read shit. Okay, that sucks. But you know, it's 1 instead of 4. And if we now launch Olama, which I've shown like 10 minutes ago, but I cannot do now. Yeah, I'm running the DeepSeek R1 32 billion parameters model, and it's loading. And surprisingly, it fits on a 12 gigabyte VRAM GPU, even if the GPU itself is quite old. I only have a single GPU at my service, no problem here. What GPU do you have? Because let me Google the Quadro M6000 is, how old is it? It is like 2015, so it's like 10 years old at this point. I think it's as old or maybe even older than my GPU I have at home. 3060 Ti, congratulations my friend, because I have even older GPU in my home PC. So you have a better GPU than I do. But tomorrow, but probably not on stream. Tomorrow I will, maybe with a colleague of mine, try and launch the bigger DeepSeek instances on our HPC GPU resources, which are not here because this is the older data center we have. They are in the newer one. So I can't show you this because otherwise I would just take the camera and go to the server room and show you. But they are also like cutting edge new, but they are just like, you know, newer. 30 billion run pretty fine. Yeah, I am actually surprised how well it runs. I mean, it doesn't really have the latest and greatest information. Okay, so it loaded. And let me maybe ask it the same query I did previously. Because previously I asked it, could it recommend me a server spec? So I will just copy and paste my query. Last time I did any GPHP2 stuff was 2010. I think we had a couple Tesla cars, might have been Fermi. Yeah, to be honest, the last time I have done some proper you know, HPC was back when I was doing my engineering and master thesis. After that, I think, you know, the small thing I done was like another streams I've done on this channel where I basically took some models that were generating anime images and I launched this on our HPC cluster because I wanted to try out some, HPC stuff, how Slurm. I wanted to, get back into how the Slurm works, how the queuing system works, how to allocate resources, stuff like that. So now it's generating on a single GPU, and if you saw how fast it is with 4 cards, then you can see how big of a slug it is right now. Maybe let me fix. Oh, now you should be able to see. It's generating like it's slower than token a second. And like I said, I know this is a mirror reflection, so you can't really see anything or maybe read anything. But it's actually using all the VRAM, almost all of the VRAM available on the card, like 12 gigs out of 12 gigs. But it's not really using all of the computational power when it comes to like raw power. I think it's doing a lot of swapping of the VRAM. And interestingly, I thought that maybe it will, like, if it works like that, it will manage to run the 70 billion parameter one. But sadly, it cannot load a 70 billion model into memory. So yes, so I will spare myself this this tardiness, and we will go back to the 4 GPUs. I cannot wait for the I cannot wait for the 5070 series to come out because I'm actually planning on buying 5070 Ti. And then I will maybe able to run some interesting stuff at home. Because right now I have, my GPU is NVIDIA 1060 with 6 gigs of RAM. VRAM, I mean. So I basically upgraded everything in my PC aside from GPU. Yeah, so it's powered off, and I will add the old GPUs. I really like how in Proxmox you basically can have this super duper or like whatever server, and you can slice and dice the PCI peripherals and just assign them to the VM. I am actually interested because I know it can be done, but I haven't done it. You can actually partition a GPU device into slices, right? So if you have a GPU with multiple streaming, I think it's still called streaming multiprocessors, SMs, then you can basically slice it so each user can have their own SM assigned. So that way you can basically slice a GPU and spread it across some users. Nice. I'm patiently awaiting the Intel B770 to play around. I have an A770. I got to try to get back into OpenCL. Haven't got into LLMs or anything yet, but with it, I hear it's not too bad for AI work. Yeah, maybe not those cards. I haven't heard anything, but definitely I've heard some voices saying that if you just want to inference, go for Intel. I think they mainly were speaking about Gaudi, but definitely I think that Intel is a strong contender if you just want to do some work. I would say that I would even look at the AMD because it's just like, the raw VRAM it has. But to be honest, if for my own personal PC, I want to go with NVIDIA because, one, CUDA, and CUDA is basically been a killer. It's like it has like a 10 or even more, development time, so it's pretty mature and everybody does CUDA. With OpenCL, Is anybody still doing OpenCL? And I mean that AMD has their own like libraries. I mean, last time I checked, and that was a long time ago, they've had Vulkan, and I think they stick around with it for, I don't know, 4 years, and then it's like something new again. I mean, last time I did OpenCL was on my master's thesis. When I was no, was it masters or was it engineers? Anyway, I was doing like a comparison of implementation of an algorithm on CUDA and on OpenCL, and OpenCL could be launched on AMD GPU and also on CPU. I mean, it was weird, right? But like OpenCL feels to me like, you know, unless you have a very specific use case, I haven't really heard a lot about OpenCL. Yeah, there's been a couple of attempts at vendor neutral stuff. By the way, I might just move this so it's not as distracting. Oh, way better. Yeah, I mean, supposedly a lot of HPC installations, at least in Europe, are based on the AMD GPU accelerators. But I also do think that this is partial thanks to, you know, a lot of institutions realizing that NVIDIA is king, right? And unless they actually try to invest in some alternatives, they might not, you know, they might end up in a situation where NVIDIA is a complete giant and there's nothing else and they can charge you as much as they want. But to be honest, I have been thinking about doing a material on this, but it really requires a lot of preparation. Because if you think about it, the GPUs for AI and GPUs for HPC are kind of two different things, right? And so typically, if you do like AI inference or even like, you know, AI training, you only need single precision, right? So you are only interested in single precision math operations like multiplication, stuff like that, and that can be done fairly. I mean, this is fairly fast, and it's pretty much well known. And you know, the single floating point performance, single precision is basically, you know, I want to say through the roof, but you know, it's pretty good, right? But as soon as you want to do double precision, then it turns out that you need a pretty expensive, either, you know, CPU or GPU or whatever. And I would say that this is the main differential factor where you can draw the line and say this GPU is for AI and this GPU is for HPC. To be honest, I haven't really dug that deep to check the latest Blackwell, how they perform on double precision. Have they, like, you know, kind of either, like, you know, still doing the double precision the best, or are they, like, you know, focused on single precision? I think that most of the top NVIDIA GPUs are actually HPC GPUs. I mean, I haven't like verified this yet. I need to like take a day to actually, you know, read through everything properly. But I'm quite curious. Is, you know, if you are buying like the most expensive NVIDIA GPU, are you actually buying an HPC GPU that has like, that just so happens to be also the best for AI training, right? That is the question I am asking myself. So is the VM up? It is. Yeah, I am back on 4 GPUs again. So I actually, okay, so what other like Llama models there are? I may try the DeepSeek Let's try 1.5 parameters. 1.5b. It is like a gigabyte in size, so I guess you could say it's almost embedded. I don't know, it seems like CUDA cores and VRAM go hand in hand. I would prefer a cheaper card with less VRAM but more cores for compute. AI models seem to like VRAM. Yes, they do, because you actually need to load either the model or the parameters somewhere. And I guess, I mean, it really depends on an application you are trying to run, right? If you are like doing a proper HPC, or if you are actually like, concerned about more compute, then, compute can always be achieved via parallelism. Sorry, difficult word. So at this point, you are probably doing either OpenAPI or you are doing a distributed computing on the NVIDIA, cards chain with NVLink, and you probably can handle your like problem scope. The thing is, many of the problems that people are trying to compute actually can fit on a single top model card, and people do prefer just doing everything on a single card because, first of all, it spares them a lot of headache, about like, distributed programming, synchronization issues and stuff like that. And secondly, you don't really have to worry about latency because it is as good as it gets, right? If you don't have to spread out to different GPUs or different like silicon hardwares in the cluster. And if you actually have a problem that scales, maybe not really outside of a single GPU, but outside of a single server. So let's say the problem is big enough so you cannot fit it in a single server, which let's say has 4 GPUs and a terabyte of RAM. Then you probably can scale from not 2, but from 100 to 200 servers. Okay, so we have 1.5, the smallest DeepSeek model. I am actually have it running. I mean, is this like fixed or is it like shit? So instead of switching between my front and back camera, it's switching for like dramatic zoom effect. It used to work like during this single stream, but whatever. Okay, so let's give it the same question. Dell server for small, recommend me Dell or HP server for small business. It has to be new and it needs to have AMD CPU. I mean, it sucks that this camera suddenly stopped working because I would love, like I did before, go through its process of thinking and its results with you. And it's done. Okay, that was fairly quick. Previously, just as an update, previously it focused a lot on the form factor because I specified that the server has to be for small business, and I thought that was interesting, and that this is something that not many fresh people in the field actually pay attention to, but this is actually semi-important, and I kind of like that. So let's see what it came up with now. So just as a heads up, the DeepSeek actually does something that's called chain of thought, and by default, if you run it with all llama, it actually shows you its chain of thought. So it can be turned off, but by default it's turned on, so you can see its process of thinking before it gives you an answer. Okay, so let me go through its thinking process. Requirements. How do I start? First, I know that servers that can, I know that servers can run on both CPUs and GPUs, but the user specifically mentioned AMD CPUs. So maybe I ask it to, could you recommend a Dell or HP server for a small business? It has to be new and it needs to have an AMD CPU. So that's like my query. And now for the process of its thinking. First, I know that servers can run on both CPUs and GPUs. Weird, okay. But the user specifically mentioned AMD CPUs, so I am thinking about AMD-based servers. I've heard of Intel Core i7 and AMD Ryzen X processors before. Maybe there are AMD server processors out there too. I think that, like, just like that, it kind of like, if you like go from 32 billion to 1.5 billion, you can notice it being more like caveman like. It's not bad still. It's just interesting. Okay, wait. Maybe I should check if Dell or HP has any new AMD server processors. I remember seeing something about AMD's TDP65 series. That might be a good target because it's within the recommended power draw for servers, which is important for longevity and cost effectiveness in the long run. So I think Dell and HP have been working on their products with AMD chips. Dell might be using the TDP6. What is the TDP65 line of processors? I mean, shit. If I could only like show you this. Well known for the hardware solutions. Similarly, HP, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. Is there like anything interesting? I should also consider where these processors are sold. Maybe they can be found through Dell or HP distributors. Also, I wonder about the price point. New servers are expensive, so maybe there are specific deals or promotions going on for. What the hell is AMD TDP60? Is this like an actual thing? AMD TDP65. So I guess it's so that, you know, the Ryzens have like TDP of 65 and it decided that yes, this has to be a whole line of processors. Okay, another thought. What about server upgrade options? If the business is not as big, they might just want a new server that runs with their existing CPU. What existing CPU? Looking into the architecture, I think AMD processors are often paired with a high-end motherboard like. Looking into the architecture, I think AMD processors are often paired with a high-end motherboard like the Proton 57 or something similar. Proton 57? Okay, so at the 1.5 billion parameters, like the lowest one, it's clearly hallucinating. But okay, let's see to the end its thought process. I also recall Dell servers offer some customers prone servers. HP also has similar hardware. So putting it all together, the key points. Key points are: look for AMD TDP65 series processors. That series do not exist. Check their distributor channels. Consider if a server upgrade is needed and explore both Dell and HP options. I don't know how it's gonna do that, but okay. Ensure the motherboard provides sufficient cooling to avoid overheating in a new setup. Okay. Look into pre-owned models for better prices, especially for smaller business. I mean, I guess. Review feature packs that include disaster recovery and other upgrades. Check the warranty coverage. I think this is within plan. So that was its thought process. And its answer is: to find an AMD server processor that meets your requirements for renewal, follow these steps. Identify AMD series, target the AMD TDP64 series. This series includes AMD's i9, i7, and Ryzen processors. So it clearly got lost as to, you know, Intel and AMD. Check distributors, I'm abridging at this point. Check distributors, motherboard consideration, upgrade considerations, feature packs, warranty check. So interestingly, on the 32 billion parameters, it actually told me, check out the Dell this model, or HP this model, and it was like a fairly good guess. On the 1.5 billion, it tells me, it writes me a plan or list of steps I should follow to basically find the server myself, which I think is pretty good, because if it goes into details, it goes completely lost, right? It tries to sell me AMD i9 or i7. Obviously, lol, right? But the plan itself is pretty reasonable, and the bigger model obviously has more knowledge. But I do find this interesting, how much of a caveman and hallucinating it became. That's correct, HP sucks. I mean, it depends. You can always, like, all of those, like, big manufacturers have their, like, pros and cons. HP and HP. I mean, I mean, some people really don't like Dell, and I get that where that's coming from, right? But I really do think that, Dell has some pretty nifty features, and I would say that unless you buy an enterprise level support, all of those platforms kinda suck. But on the other hand, if you actually spend, as a company, those extra few $100, I would say you are set for years to come. And yeah, I mean, like you said, the CUDA is a standard. I also think that, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to. It will be very hard to, let's say, get rid of CUDA without somebody stepping up and being like, okay, we are gonna be a competitor for CUDA, but this is gonna take us 10 to 15 years for the developers to, grow with our proposed ecosystem, right? I think that, beating CUDA, and by extension beating NVIDIA, will be at least a few years of, like, hard dedicated work, and the company being constantly funded and not stepping back down. Okay, but like I said, the 1.5 billion parameter, like, only takes up 1 gig of hard drive space, so it's, I would say, quite nice. Is it like, okay, write me a short poem. I'm just telling it to do anything, because I mean, I am, okay, GPU memory usage, because I have, like, NVIDIA SMI fired up, so it is using, like, almost 2 gigs of GPU memory usage on the smallest model. So let's, it is insanely fast, but I do have like 4 GPUs available. Let me try a bit bigger one. So let's go back to the 32 billion, because that's the biggest one we can launch. Oh, okay, I have a nifty idea. I wonder if it can do that. I will ask it to generate me an image of something and output it as base 64. And then I will try, I'll just copy that and decode it so it actually comes out as a JPEG. I wonder if things like that can be done. Like, let's say image generation from text to text based model. Yep, it's on. So what should we have it generate? Please generate an image of I'm sure it knows about kittens. Okay, an image of a cat with resolution of 800 by 600 pixels in a JPEG format and present the results as base64 encoded string. Enter. Okay, it's thinking. I mean, right now it's going through its own like chain of thoughts. And by just as a refresher, this is the biggest model I can run, the 32 billion parameter one. So it actually wanted to access DALL-E, but then it fixed itself and said that, okay, I cannot access that. It's funny how it's like, you watch it's like thought process, and it basically is constantly like, okay, I could do that, but that's too complicated. Okay, I could do that, but that's too complicated. Okay, I could do that, but that wouldn't be the thing I'm asked to do. Yeah, so I think it came to conclusion that it cannot do that, and instead it's giving me a list of steps. And yeah, so its answer is use an AI-based tool or graphic design software to create the desired image. Fuck you. Tools like DALL-E or Midjourney can generate realistic images from text descriptions. But that was like its first option. Second option was okay, so it's not options. It's like a list of steps. First, generate the image, then save the image, and as a third point, it's giving me a Python code to encode my result into base64. I mean, this is pretty, interesting and amazing. But I do think that I am still like, my job is safe. It will not be taken by the AI. Fun fact, I asked 40 billion DS to write an ASM code for C64 to display white hello world on black screen. It took about almost 15 minutes in thinking, and eventually it produced pseudo-basic code to do the job. I mean, people see these AI tools as, almost second coming of Christ. They ask it the most basic questions, or or maybe they ask it to perform some programming problems that have been covered for thousands of times on Stack Overflow. And as soon as you have something that isn't really well documented, or hasn't been asked 1,000 of times, then suddenly it's like, I don't know, have you tried not having the problem? Yeah, especially that, it's giving me a Python code for base 64 and encoding, but you know anybody who's worth their salt knows that Linux has inbuilt base 64 command. Like almost every distribution has it, right? I mean, there are some things in AI that I think are super duper interesting, and I would really, really want to try them out more. I've had this idea whether the AI could reconstruct me like a network topology based on text configs pulled from the devices, right? So whether it can reason that this port is connected to this other device, this is actually a lag configuration, or maybe this is a bonded interface or stuff like that. But then I basically run into the wall because it turns out that especially I thought that rags could do it, but it turns out that rags um, depend on the fact that you can actually split the input text into some as far as I understand it, into some independent chunks. So, you know, if you're like reading an encyclopedia, you don't have to understand really the whole encyclopedia or a whole page if you want to just, get a definition of a word. And if you want to analyze like configs to create topology from them, you actually need the whole image. So ideally, you would have to paste configs from all of the devices in the network. And it turns out this is such a large context that not many models, or not all of the hardware can handle this at once. I think. I mean, like I said, I kind of like done some like very surface-based testing, but it definitely started hallucinating a lot. Though it was able to um, at least tell me that that the model is looking at the Juniper config, or maybe Brocade config, or Arista config. At least it was able to do that, which I thought that this is something that can be worked on. I remember I talked with one AI researcher and presented to him my problem, and he said that I need to construct the you know database with relations of the network devices, and I said, yeah, that's the task at hand. If the AI can do this for me, then yeah, I actually want the AI to do that. So it didn't. So finally, it did not give me the base 64 result I asked it to. So maybe let's try with something simpler. Can I ask it to encode something in base 64, like just a simple text? So please write me. Okay, so some passages from the Bible, but present the output as base 64 encoded text. I mean, I was thinking about, some text that it's been definitely input or, trained on. And I could only think on the Bible, but now that I give it like a second more of thought, this is a Chinese model. It might not know what the Bible is. What is what is like the Chinese, the what was called the proletariat? Well, oh my God, what was his name? Anyway, I think you know what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, I was talking about the Communist uh, Manifest by Karl Marx. I mean, if the Chinese model doesn't know that, is it even Chinese? Winnie the Pooh, yeah. Could you tell me who lives in the 100-acre woods? I think it's also like with this query, it's coming to a conclusion that it should, instead of doing it, it actually should tell me how to do it. It's not even giving me a passage. It tells me to use, like, Genesis 1, 1 to 3, right? And once again, it's giving me the Python code. Sorry, it's actually giving me the passage in the Python code. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Okay, so I think that I might try and add the query, do not give me a list of steps to perform by myself. So let's give it a try once more. I wonder if, like, adding context in the form of, you are being a text processor, or you are being a computer program that, it's responsible for blah blah blah, would fix it. Interesting. So in its chain of thought, it says that in my previous response, I provided a detailed thought process and even included a Python script example on how to encode such text. However, the user's new query specifies that they don't want a list of steps as instruction only, they just want the encoded output directly. Interesting. I wonder how it's handling the history of conversation, the context of the conversation. So it's still thinking. Okay, it's actually giving me some base 64. Yeah, I mean, it has to be, but I'm thinking about what the limitation of context are. Like, how far back can it reach? But I think we have it. I think it's actually giving us some base 64. So the best thing about this is we can very easily see if it's bullshitting us by checking whether this will decode into an actual text. So, okay, it's generating more passages, but we have one. So, like I said, mirrored. Sorry, you won't be able to read it, but just take my word for it. I mean, you can see it's doing something, right? I think that, you know, this won't really be worth this won't really be worth much, seeing as it's basically came into some repeated loop. But we'll see. What's in the model properties? Yeah, I to be honest, you know, I haven't like read those yet. I have only like tried Llama and just like, you know, download and run. So let me fire up terminal. Let's go Vim. Does it look like a valid basics for? Yes. So at least it looks like it. It even has like the equal sign at the very end for the padding. But that's like the first passage. The second passage, I think it broke, but I will show you that in a second. First, let me check whether the first one is like worth anything. Okay, base 64 minus D and the string. Okay, it's close. So so like I said, shit, this is like a mirrored text, but I guess you will be able to at least see something. So let me do just that, and maybe let's make use of this shitty functionality. So let me just verify the second stream. Okay, so here you have the base 64, and you here actually have like, as you can see, text. So at least it actually decoded to a proper like text instead of like binary data. But it's garbage, and like it says that. Maybe I can like stop being zoomed in because it's not like you're gonna read it by yourself. It says, join the beginning, red jump in, response is your example, your commonable and your tenda, sit market, steps or ships. In the beginning God created, join the benai, red jump in, response is your example, you our commonable and your tenda, sit market, steps or ships. In the beginning God created. It's garbage, but it is a base 64 that decoded into text. Yeah, but it's broke anyway. I think this is like, okay. So once more, just a quick look so you can have it. It's still generating response to that query. So yeah, so this is the thing we've just decoded, and as you can see, this is in some sort of a loop. So you know we won't know what John 3:16 is. This is actually quite a good idea. So I wonder if Control C. Okay, Control C thankfully didn't kill the model. It only like killed the query generation. But we can ask it. What do you think about Communist Manifesto? by Karl Marx. I mean, it's stuck, but it's like perpetually stuck. So something about it kept it going on, and I actually wonder how long would it be going. So with Bible, I think within its chain of thought, it came fairly quickly to conclusion that this is a delicate subject, this is a religion, uh, and it might be interesting to warn the user about the context of using the Bible. With Karl Marx, I don't think it's having anything like that. Okay, so now it's thinking about the revolution. Now it's thinking about Bernie Sanders. I have to say the chain of thought is, more interesting to read than the actual answer by the AI itself. Hi Christian. So I'm running the DeepSea AI on some local GPU server I have, trained on Twitter. Lol. Yeah. I'm running some local AI models. I'm trying out the current big thing. So currently we are checking what does it think about Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. Because when we asked it about the Bible to encode some Bible passages with base 64, it kinda got lost fairly quickly. But it actually did manage to encode some text into base 64, even if it was garbage. Okay, so it's actually done thinking and it's now producing an answer. So I think it's coming to a conclusion where it says that the manifesto is okay, but its implementations in history are not so great. It's not the real communism. So to be honest, I was just thinking whether it will try to be critical about it in any way, but it's not. If I were like 15 or 14 years old and I asked about this this model, I could be like, I think, fairly well, uh, you know I want to say manipulated into thinking that, yeah, maybe. Okay, enough politics. I mean, I was interested. I mean, the Bible was just an example because I thought like this is the most well-known text. But we don't want to dabble too much into politics. But it actually, okay, so it actually can do some base 64 encoding, though I think that, maybe if I manage to run some bigger model tomorrow, then maybe, it will actually be able to perform some actual, let's say, computation tasks, because, outputting the code is okay, but I do find more impressive if it were able to, perform some computations by itself, if it like understood what base 64 is, or maybe what XOR is, if it could like, sorry, compute like CRC 32 checksum or MD5 hash. We can actually ask that. Can you compute MD5? Oh, okay, so compute MD5 checksum of a string ABCD. Don't provide me the list of steps. Anything else? I don't think so. And as it's doing that, we can compute this by our own. Does the Mac have inbuilt MD5? Okay. Yep. So I have computed that checksum on my MacBook. Okay, it's thinking, so it will be thinking for a moment again. Oh, sorry, Christian, I missed your message. How do you like the DeepSeek? It's interesting that it runs, and I really like that. It runs on my like old hardware I'm doing right now. But it's interesting that, like I said, I wasn't sure whether this is like a property of all Llama or of the DeepSeek itself. It actually scales across GPUs, right? So I have like 4 GPUs without any NVLink or anything like that. Those are like 10-year-old Quadro 6000s. But the model actually make use of all of the 4 GPUs. So I've tried, because this is a VM, I've tried like running this with 1 GPU and with 4 and stuff like that. And it actually can scale without like any additional input whatsoever. So I'm not sure whether this is like a model property or this is like an all-Llama thing. It's LLM, it will not run MD5 sum under the hoodie, unfortunately. Yeah, so yes, exactly. So I'm not expecting it to find a binary in the system and do it. I would expect it to understand how MD5 sum works and then basically do it within itself somehow. But maybe hashing isn't the easiest example. So it actually kind of managed with base 64, like somehow. Okay, I think it's done thinking and it ignored. No, it didn't. Okay. So the checksum is wrong. Like, I guess no surprises there. But it did give me like a Python snippet to do this, and then it said when you run this code, it will output the MD5 checksum of ABCD, which is, and here's the hash. So maybe, but just maybe, it considered the quotes to be also the part of the string. Might be a dumb question, but how do you know it isn't just remembering the MD5 sum from the past data it was trained on? Hash. Weird. Good question. How do I know? Because the checksum is wrong. If it gave me, let's say, like a valid checksum, then sure, I guess. But I guess this is also like coming down to the entropy, because okay, let's say you have a list of all the possible MD5 checksums, right? And I don't want to really calculate this, but let's say it takes, I don't know, 500 gigabytes uncompressed to like store all of the possible MD5 checksums as txt file. I mean, this is the number like on the top of my head, right? If the model, okay, we have like 500 gigs, and let's say if compressed with gzip or LZA4 or whatever, it's not 500 gigs, it's 100 gigs. If your model has less than 100 gigs, then I'm pretty sure that it's not basically having all of those checksums remembered. And that's basically coming down to the entropy, because you cannot infinitely compress something to a single byte, because you are losing the information. So I would say there is, because this is like a one point of view of viewing the AI models, and I really like using it, and that's basically looking at the model and thinking, okay, this is a zip archive of knowledge with some pretty nifty natural language interface to extract the data from. And if you look at it like that, and you remember the basis of entropy, and the Shannon theorem, stuff the basic IT like theoretical stuff, then it becomes pretty obvious that it can remember a lot of things, but it cannot remember everything. So I wouldn't say that this is reasoning the answer. I would say that most often this is like guessing the answer. So by doing that, it's basically avoiding the remembering thing and the entropy thing, but instead you are getting basically a guessing machine where every word is a guess, right, in one way or another. And if you look at this like if you look at it like that, I think this is a pretty strong argument, where you could say that if you have some mission critical systems where there has to be not even 99%, but like 100% of certainty all time, every time where a decision is made. And there are some systems like that, military medicine. You cannot have a system that basically says, okay, 1 in every 10 patients can die, because the model that we are using can sometimes make a wrong prediction. Then I am pretty convinced that this is an argument against saying that current AIs are anywhere near close, like general like they are nowhere near close like general intelligence. But I do think that many people do forget the very basic IT or computer science axioms like entropy or stuff like that, because I also think that somebody who's like really into AI sees a 300 gig model and says, yeah, this is pretty much indistinguishable from Aggie. And while maybe to some degree you are also saying that the reasoning process fits on 300 gigabyte storage, right? It's important to look at this from different perspectives. Like I said, this mine is very basic, and it kind of doesn't go into nuances, and I acknowledge that. I do think that if you go into nuances, then this is not really as easy as I just presented it to be. But I do think this is a compelling argument if somebody is all guns ho on the AI. Yeah, only for simple and basic query. Basically, the AI is good for non-mission critical stuff, or maybe life and death situations. By the way, I do want to say that maybe that checksum is almost no, okay, so even if I add like quotes and stuff, the checksum is bullshit. So it's not really calculating. But can we like chat? Let me just do a quick check on the chat GPT. Hi. Let me just do a quick check on chat GPT how it would handle this. So let me do a complete copy of a query. So ChatGPT also gave me checksum and it's completely wrong. With or without the quotes. Interesting. I kind of assume that with ChatGPT it has some sort of like pre-processing where there are cases where they basically like distinguish some part of problems and they could like direct those to actually compute in some discrete manner and then come back to ChatGPT with the result. But no, it's not one of those. I did Windows AD on my home lab for fun, so I can demo smart card ALF for PKI tag. Nice. That's cool as hell. I mean, I would say that doing Windows AD, because I think you're talking about Active Directory. If you do Active Directory and you actually find out what Active Directory is, I think the people that have done this have stopped saying that Linux can ever replace Windows. Because Active Directory is such a killer feature of Windows that Linux is nowhere near close in any shape or form. That I think that if you are doing AD and you know AD, you are pretty well versed to actually decide whether some deployments need Linux or Windows. Linux just can't do Active Directory. Yeah. Yes, basically, yeah. Copilot fails some miserably on legacy code, so yeah, legacy code is not popular, so it's not the flavor of the month, JavaScript framework or Python framework, right? Yeah, group policy can do so much. Yeah, it's amazing that so many people have no idea that they can just like do GP edit or open the console, the MS console. I don't remember what exact command was, and there are so many predefined settings with GPOs, like basically hide the control panel, maybe log the CD-ROM, whatever, right? It's amazing. I mean that I'm not really saying that one OS is better than the other, but if Windows didn't have this whole commercials and ads and stuff like that, if Windows was free, as Linux is, I'm sorry, but I don't think Linux would stick. I use it to make Windows not search the web from the start menu. Yeah. Is it actually like a GPO setting, or do you have like specify it to do some registry magic? And it makes it a lot easier to redeploy a Windows machine. Yes, yes. Sometimes I wish that there existed something. It's GPU on registry. Okay. Sometimes I really wish there existed something like AD for Linux, and not just for, like, let's say, fleet management, but just to have like all of the possible settings in a system like listed for you, as the GPUs uh, uh, like are prepared, like basically moderated very well for the past 10 or 20 years, just so you know what your system can actually do, block, and maybe forbid, allow, stuff like that. But with Linux being as open as it is, not possible, sadly. But yeah, I remember when I deployed my first Active Directory when I was like 20 something. I think I was still like at university, where I was working some job, and I actually did the AD deployment from scratch. Very eye-opening experience. Ansible is probably the closest thing, eh? Kinda, but not really, because Ansible doesn't track state, and that's the biggest, like, I would say, fault of Ansible. I mean, if you possibly deploy Ansible Tower, then I guess it can, but by itself, Ansible doesn't really keep state. It basically just executes some commands on a host, and then it's done. And then it's not concerned as to whether something has changed or not, unless you program the playbook specifically. But that's you, and that's not Ansible by itself. Salt can keep state, and I think it's better for the job, even though it's less popular. But I think that's the destiny of solutions that are easier to use but don't provide as much value as you might think. Microsoft Intune is a thing for Linux. FreeIPA is the closest you'll get for the directory services. I guess maybe LDAP, like just for the user management or group management. Ansible, Puppet, maybe. I haven't really used Puppet. I have used Ansible in the past, and I've seen used Ansible like extensively. But like I said, like doing Ansible requires like full commitment, and that sometimes is hard, especially if you have multiple teams working on let's say a fleet of servers, or like a solution, right, or a project. FreeIPA is LDAP, Kerberos, and certificate services in one. Yeah, it's like an aggregate. Yeah. I've only like mostly on Linux I'm dealing with, let's say, LDAP servers. So we are mostly doing this subset of directory services just to manage users more efficiently. My domain controller is a single VM on my desktop that's running everything. Understandable. I would say many professional deployments also have it configured like that, mostly because licensing, Microsoft is a bitch. So yeah, I know there are like screaming in every tutorial or workshop they can do that. You should always have at least 2 domain controllers, etc. But to be honest, you'll be fine with 1, because those licenses are expensive as hell. It's surprising so many people do not really know that Hyper-V is basically free. They are like the Hyper-V virtualized hypervisor has like a free tier. Oh shit. Because I've done some deployments. IRC doesn't every DHCP lease need a Windows client access license. DHCP, I don't think so. The RDP, the remote desktop, yes. So 10 years ago, there wasn't anything like that. I think they've only introduced this like in the past like 5 to some years. Now you have two types of CAL licenses. So you have like the calls for user accounts, and you have separate RDP calls for remote desktop sessions. So they found a way to milk you out of more money. Ubuntu has this tool for GPEO that translates some policies to Gconf language, adds sync something, but it only some settings unsupported. Yeah, I think Ubuntu is actually doing a good job. So like Ubuntu and SteamOS with Arch Linux, because they are actually making at least, or maybe trying to make some sort of standardized environment. Because how can you expect something to become popular for developers if you have so many flavors of things, right? So you can have Ubuntu with GNOME, you can have Debian with Mate, but Ubuntu has those packages, Debian has those packages. As a developer, I mean, there are like snaps and flatpaks, but to be honest, I've been doing like app images because they are the easiest and they have the least overhead, and for me they are the fastest. By the way, I might connect my phone to charging because it's almost dead, but now it's saved. We use Hyper-V here for prod without domain. Not a huge fan compared to say XCPNG or prod. Yes. So there is like a big asterisk to everything, and even if Hyper-V has a free tier, it like as many things in Microsoft, it works best when connected to a domain. I mean, there are some extra licenses you can buy, but if you want to have like easy live migration and stuff like that, then AD is the easiest way to go, because other than that you have to configure so many things on Hyper-V, the trusts, etc. For even the stupid live migration to work, which is crazy, but I think they are like doing this kind on purpose, so that you just buy a license and fuck off. And also Hyper-V, by default, even in the free tier, I think only has a limit of 2 VMs per Hyper-V node or hypervisor, so there's also that, but sometimes it's enough if you want to have some small deployment that has some robust Windows virtualization. I found you from the Intel NIC LACP video. Thanks, yeah, I mean, this video did so well, and I don't know whether I've hit a note with something. Turns out I maybe hit like a gold vein when it comes to this NIC being popular at this certain moment in time. Behind this glass there are the servers that I've been diagnosing in this vid, right? And we like literally got like another like batch of servers for another projects that also have this family of Intel NICs in them. And I think that I'm the most surprised about the comments I've got under this video, where basically a lot of people said, yeah, like I've also had like similar problems, or maybe even different problems with Intel NICs. Which I kinda always had like those this inclined thinking about like Intel being a bit problematic when it comes to NICs, especially with like high performing ones. But now I think it turns out that there's a lot of people having trouble with this. What they really want is for you to use Entra ID. I mean, I think you mean Enterprise. Yeah, the licenses are so like complicated in Microsoft, and that they basically have like a hotline where you can call them and be like, help me choose a license, because we have no idea what we should even be ordering. By the way, I do also like think that because considering that the LACP video was such a hit, I would really like to maybe do some more networking tutorials, but where some people do the tutorials, very basically, as where they're like, do what's the mask and what's the IP address. I do think that this is also something that I've noticed is like disappearing, like the very basic knowledge of how networking works, because I do have had some talks with job candidates, then they basically most often fail spectacularly on a simple stuff like that. I do think that we also need more tutorials on networking in the big enterprise world, because currently the routing and switching is so weird that the lines between what is a router and what is a switch essentially blur, because right now you have layer 3 switches that can basically do things that traditionally your router can do, right? Which is interesting. And most often big operators only call something a router if it can fit a full BGP internet table in it itself. So I think like that sort of content of network tutorials would be interesting, but we'll see how it goes. It needs a lot of preparation. For driver support, I find Intel NICs to be pretty good. I use SR IOV on my desktop, give VMs a network interface. For networking at home, I use MikroTik. Oh, yeah, so to be honest, I haven't really used SR IOV from Intel, because basically I do all of my like stuff via bridging in Proxmox in Linux. It's fine. Oh, hi Krzysztof. I do need to write to you on LinkedIn, and I've been thinking about it, by the way. And now that I see you here, I might do that like today, later after I'm done. But going back to SCJ, for networking I use MikroTik. Yeah, well, I have like a love and hate relationship with MikroTik, because they do offer some reasonably priced hardware, but I don't really like the CLI, and the web UI is I really like for me the golden standard of CLI is Juniper, with their like Juniper CLI, with the commit and stuff like that. It's very readable, and all the time I've known Juniper, I only worked with Juniper via CLI, and I absolutely love it. With MikroTik, yeah, when I sometimes are consulting for small businesses, then yeah, I kind of recommend MikroTik. Right now, I actually wanted to check out the Unify gear for routing and switching. Surprisingly, not for Wi-Fi. But maybe that deployment will grow. I use ViOS for my router, which is CLI only. I've never tried it actually. I've heard mixed opinions on this, on the YOS. Like there's also like Sonic, but Sonic is only, I don't think Sonic runs as a VM. I think it could be running as a VM. To be honest, you could actually run Arista or maybe Nokia as a VM, because they do provide let's say free of charge images, but I think they do have some limitations where they cannot be faster than X packets per second, or maybe the routing engine reboots every day or every week or something like that. I think there was something like this. I don't like Unify because of the controller requirement. So yes, but I was told that you can install the controller in a VM locally and have it like completely offline, which I think is pretty interesting. And especially if you are doing a deployment for someone, you can provide them with neatly looking GUI that supports all of the unified lineup of products, at least at the moment in time. And it also supposedly upgrades really well. So I wanted to test that out. And I think that yesterday or even the day before that, I don't like Java and Mongo running. I don't like Java and Mongo running on my home lab. Yes, me too. Same. But it is how it is. But coming back to my point, I think I've priced like Unify gear like yesterday, and I think that you can have like a router that can switch like up to 5 gigabit per second or 6 gigabit, like just like internal routing speed, even if it has like 1 gig interfaces, which is I think quite important. So you can have a router like that. You can have 10 gig router, 10 gig switch with 10 or 12 SFP ports. You can have 48 fanless 1 gigabit copper switch, so that's 3 devices for under $1,500. So that's less than $2,000, which I think is pretty nifty, considering that if you would want to buy, and you know, and this is like basically potentially managed from single controller, right? When compared to, let's say, Juniper or whatever, because Juniper also has some like, you know, small business gear. Juniper basically is way slower. If you want to go with SRX 300 or something like that, yes, it is reasonably priced. But if you want to do some, if you want to treat it as firewall, or maybe, you know, a router on a stick where many networks exchange traffic, then you notice that it has terrible switching speed. I use Zabbix and SNMP for monitoring, and even have it set up so to send critical alerts over a real LTA modem using SMS. We have exactly the same thing here. We have Zabbix. We are like testing some alternative methods to sending SMSs, because we used to have, like, you know, those USB modems that you plug into a port, and then, you know, you write it directly SMS commands, but right now we are checking out some Teltonika stuff. If you want to have some cool router, or maybe out-of-band router or something like that, check out Teltonika, and I will even write it in chat. They have very reasonably priced devices, and you know, perfect for stuff like that. They even like basically expose the SMS sending as an API, so we can have like REST HTTP endpoint in network, where if you send something, it will send an SMS. Yeah, UI is pretty good value for SMB. Yep. How about CFG automation management tools on all of these? I mean, CLI is cool, GUI is nice for some cases, but it's nice to have your CFG in Git, which was a big no for Janusz. What are we talking about? Network management or something else? Because we store the network configs in, I think at the moment it's like a mix of Rancid, but there's also like Oxidize, which are not perfect. And we also have a big like mix and match of vendors. So we have, like, you know, Juniper, Brocade, Ruckus, you know, and it's like not enough fingers on a single hand to basically cover on the vendors. HP, switches, routers, stuff like that. So we cannot really have like one big solution to cover everything, because, you know, Juniper has Mist if you want to have everything Juniper, and I think even right now they've rebranded Mist into something else. Arista has something else, HP has something else, Dell has something else, right? But that only works when your environment is consistent, right? So dedicated tools for every vendor. You know, that depends. How big is your network, and, you know, how cash money are you, right? Like I said, this is an academic institution. Like, it has the growing pains of like having, like, sometimes having some money and sometimes not having enough money at all, right? And, you know, especially being public institution, it's not like you can go to a store and be like, I don't know, I want this specific router or switch. So that's how you end up with, you know, mix and match of vendors. At the moment, it is doable to basically manage everything via CLI by a person. Like, network isn't really that complicated, so you can't do it. Especially if it's like split into projects, right? So there are some racks that have their own responsibility and have their own like set of people to manage them, and they only like have a single uplink to, you know, a switch or a router managed by a different team. So if it's like done like that, it can be done. But it is complicated, and you know, I think that when I was in Norway. By the way, can you still hear me? I hope you can still hear me. When I was in Norway, in the Meteorological Institute, they told me that they've just finished their gigantic project of basically doing the whole network management, and not only network, also like cluster and server resources via single Ansible repository. So they told me that it took them like, I want to say a year or two, maybe even more, to construct an Ansible repository where they keep configuration of everything, like servers, switches, network, VLANs, you know, all stuff like that. And basically to come up with a process of managing everything. Because they also have been like using, I want to call it open source hardware, but basically something that doesn't make them completely tied to a vendor. And still allows them to basically have some wiggle room when it comes to choosing the hardware for the next deployment project or upgrade. But they have way better funding. They are dedicated to a single project of being, you know, Meteorological Institute, and they have more people, right? So I think thanks to that, they were able to achieve that. I think that, you know, especially with like recent technologies, there is some tech in networking that can kinda still make you like avoid doing full automation and, you know, centralization, but that depends on the size of your network. But like, you know, with, for example, a VPN. For a VPN, obviously, it's the best if you have like homogeneous environment where you have mostly single vendor, and then you can basically do, let's say, you have like a high cost of implementing that, but after that, if you want to, you know, do some VLANs or switching on routing, then it's basically, you know, the configuration is, I want to say, minimal, not always, but, you know, very often. And then you don't really have to, like, you know, keep everything automated because you need to configure a VLAN on 10 switches down the stack, right? I mean, like, centralized solutions are good if you have like homogeneous environment. If your environment is, you know, very chopped up, then, you know, it becomes a pain. And I think every institution has this pain. I mean, personally, I'm so surprised that there isn't an influx of tools like Rancid or Oxidize. Like, I know Rancid is basically an old news at this point, and Oxidite is this new shiny thing that, you know, kind of sucks in some aspects, like supporting IPv6, as I found out. That, you know, I am really surprised that there isn't, like, you know, more projects on this. I am also like always baffled by the fact that sometimes it's so hard to have vendors agree to be able to output the configuration in the text format in a comprehensive way, right? Because if there was like a standard for that, and I know there kinda are, like, I want to say netconf, but not really. It's crazy. I just want my text configuration so I can store this in Git or whatever, right? By the way, I think this is slowly a time for me to wrap up, because to be honest, it's not like I am staying late at work because I'm bored. I'm staying because I'm waiting for someone. But I think I still have some time. my YOS router actually automatically commits its changes into a Git instance. Yeah, I mean, if that's a feature, then sure. It only becomes a headache if you have like a fleet of routers and switches, right? Networking is very different from the other parts of infrastructure, I guess. In most aspects, dedicated hardware switches for hardware software for each vendor, mostly closed source and within expensive licenses. Yes, totally. I do want to notice that I really think that there are some vendors that, at least in my opinion, are playing ball better than the others. So two things and two vendors that aren't really as popular, I think, in Poland or maybe in Europe are Nokia and Arista. And I think Arista is very unique for their approach to being open and how they implement the network operating system, because the unique thing about Arista is that they have the ELSE operating system, and every single device in their lineup has, if they are like using ELSE version 4, then every single device that uses ELSE version 4 has the same binary running down to the checksum. And I think this is unique because basically Arista is not developing, it doesn't have like a different teams for developing, I don't know, switch hardware, router hardware, and stuff like that. They have a team that develops this operating system, and that operating system is present on every single Arista gear. And they also give you virtual machines or containers for free if you want to construct your networking lab, which hopefully I'll be doing on some stream next time, finally. And Nokia is also pretty open, right? So, you know, maybe not all of the Nokia platforms, but the SR Linux based ones are pretty open. I think the SR Linux is even open source at this point, so yeah. Yeah, Ansible for networking stuff, it's hard to not think about just pushing a config file, templated or not, as your only task. Yeah. But still, if it's not keeping state, then it's a problem, because, you know, the problem is that, you know, Ansible basically does a push, and if you do not have some solution that checks whether, you know, something has changed in between, because maybe somebody, some little elf logged into the switch and made some changes, then maybe your next push will change something, and you didn't know that something has been changed beforehand, and now your network is down. So that's a problem. I never was into network stuff. For me, it's VNet, subnets, IPsec in Azure GCP. You know what? I also was never into networks. I never wanted to be network engineer, and I don't really call myself. I would never really call myself network engineer, like just network engineer. But hey, you do what you're assigned to do, and, you know, you basically sink in the knowledge, right? I fell into trap of buying cheap Arista hardware off eBay. I wanted to get the latest OS, and Ansible told me to pound sand. Lol. Maybe Ansible isn't the best for you. I mean, Cisco NSO is a bit like complicated. It's more of a framework than ready-to-go automation tool. But to be honest, now that I think about it, Cisco NSO is something that you could do almost everything for every vendor in. I don't really want to go into explanation of what Cisco NSO is, but, you know, it's basically a... It's not really a tool, it's a framework to build your tools upon. But I have to, like, warn everyone, it's really complicated, but you can do a lot with it. I guess we need to catch up because it seems like those are interesting topics. Yeah, uh, you know, whole IT is very interesting. I hope that maybe sometime in the future, hopefully this year, I will be able to show everyone the new cluster that my institution is buying. So it's still like in the works, and I don't really want to say anything more than that. But hey, it would be a cool thing to show off. Make out of band changes a crime. Well, yeah, like punished by death. Arista told me to put stuff life happens. Was typing this. Yeah. I mean, there are so many like interesting things to IT. I mean, sorry for the camera wiggling, but this table isn't very stable. There are so many things interesting in IT world that most of the mainstream channels don't really cover. I'm not really sure why. Sometimes I think that if you work in the field long enough, and I'm not really saying I'm a veteran or anything because I am not, but if you work long enough, you can see that somebody is making, let's say, YouTube material, but he doesn't really work with the stuff he's talking about. And sometimes this can be covered up by a good writing team, but sometimes it shows. It shows that this is either a script that's been given to them, or maybe it's weird. And I think that maybe I think this is like a, I don't really want to say a big trap, but this is something that especially younger people interested in IT don't really recognize. And I don't really want to say they fell into the trap of listening to those tutorials or those YouTubers, but sometimes it shows. Sometimes it shows that you talk with somebody on a job interview and they have like an incline about some high-level concepts that maybe they worked on, maybe they didn't. But if you ask them about basics, and I don't really want to be like a dick and ask about some basic stuff that doesn't really come in hand at work. I want to ask about something that actually does. They have no idea, because they think that if they get their educations from YouTube, boot camps, online courses, that's all they need. And to be honest, if you are somebody young that wants to learn, then sure, those gaps can be covered pretty quickly. But if you thought that you've learned all there is, then I'm sorry, but there's a whole lot more to learn. Niche does not make money on YouTube. I don't really know if that's true, because a lot of niches are saturated, and this is like a balance of being in a niche that's not saturated and being interesting enough so that people actually watch you. This is like also with the balance of producing YouTube video. Do you want to overproduce your video, which means that you're basically putting in hours that don't really give you anything in return, because you are still getting the same amount of watch time, clicks, etc. Or do you not produce anything at all, and you are just like, let's say, outputting one hour of gameplay where you don't really say anything interesting, or your reactions are very basic, or you don't have anything interesting to say at all, right? But I do think that some niches that people don't think are saturated are in fact very saturated. It's the same for some written content like blogs, etc. Basically copied documentation and code snippets without even using the code anywhere, and the LLMs are trained on this and really know nothing. Yes, that's 100% true, and I've actually had, I don't remember what was that exactly, but I was looking up something very basic that I kind of knew how it needs to be done, but I was like, okay, I just want to Google this and copy and whatever. Every single article I found had the same wrong explanation, which means that they basically all copied off one another and nobody basically verified the solution. And only single article had the solution good enough to the point where I basically concluded that, okay, this is a year old, so it's not really that it's wrong, it basically got outdated a bit. But I think I was like, okay, 4 or 5 some articles that, you know, had copy and paste solution, it was wrong. So totally, that totally happens. Niche does make money, but not on YouTube. I mean, you know, if somebody has a very niche channel and, you know, they have like audience, then they are being watched and they have, you know, money. My problem, I mean, not really problem. The thing I am doing bad or wrong on YouTube is that I have definitely not. I have terrible upload schedule, which means that if I were like uploading more recently or more often, I would have my channel monetized by now. But I don't, right? So even if I had, you know, even if I still had my, you know, niche numbers, then I would probably get monetized, because, you know, you also need to get your foot through the door and actually need to get people familiarized with yourself. I do think that a lot of advices on YouTube that you can get on how to run and start the channel, especially considering, you know, miniatures and video titles, or maybe, you know, how to read statistics, are made from the POV of channels that have hundred thousands of subs, and that's a completely different league of looking at things compared to when you're at 1,000, 2,000, less than that subs, especially when it comes to promotion and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I do make some, let's say, beer money on Udemy. I do have a course on Udemy on OpenVPN and WireGuard, because I've noticed that, you know, the existing courses on that suck, and they suck in both production value and, you know, in the material presented. I don't really want to sell this course or advertise it. I mean, whatever. If somebody asks me on Discord, I will just give you 100 discount code, whatever. It's just beer money, and, you know, it's just something I did for fun when I completely started out doing anything, you know, YouTube, audio, video, whatever, just to see if it's any viable method of earning money. And I do have to say that, you know, if you look up those niches, and you actually will, like, you know, notice that, okay, this is good, but I can do this better, then sure, you can earn money on those, I would say. I mean, imagine me peddling my shitty Udemy course at the end of every YouTube video I do. That would be instant unsubscribe, or like people wouldn't even consider subscribing at all. I mean, today has taught me one thing, that, you know, I definitely, even if I want to stream from this place, because I can, I need to find better place for the camera so it doesn't shake when I even, like, that was just me typing on that shitty desk. Oh, I do need to check the Discord actually. My monitor has screen shakes when I type. Yeah. I mean, you know, when I was younger, I basically ignored everything, but I'm not really that old. I'm 33. Shit, I'm old. But, you know, the value of a good, heavy, sturdy desk and you know, a big monitor and a comfortable chair has only increased for me with time, basically. You need a gimbal and 50K USD 8K camera. How do I tell you this? I kinda already have those. Not 8K, but 6K. And I do have a fucking amazing gimbal. So if you like, almost all of my videos are recorded with Blackmagic 6K. And this is not this camera. This is like Sony ZV-E10, but I only bought it because I wanted something more, you know, something that I can take with me, right? But that motherfucking Blackmagic is a fucking professional beast to use, and it's so difficult to handle. Like, even if I am using it basically as just, you know, sitting on top of a tripod and recording myself, color grading everything is a nightmare. And you know, it's not like I bought it. It basically came as an afterthought, as a part of some project. And basically I was like, okay, nobody's using this, I can make use of this. And it also has like some amazing gimbal, like it's DJI whatever, but it's like a very, very big gimbal, very heavy. So I actually took it with me, the gimbal, to the States, and I used that gimbal with this camera to capture all of my footage when I was at SC24. I was thinking of Sony A6100 to do the occasional vlog. I want to get pocket camera, cinema 6K, but sadly I got later in September. That sucks. I mean, that sucks. Advent of the LLM might actually mean iBlog instead. Yeah, so when it comes to cameras, I would say just get something that, you know, 6K has a lot of issues, because if you actually want to capture 6K, remember two things. First, the Blackmagic has like HDMI port, at least the one I have. I don't think it's Pocket. It has HDMI output. That output is only for preview and only for preview, which means that it has HDMI preview, which is only full HD. That sucks, obviously. So it means that you have to record, and only with that recording you can do anything. And if you want to record 6K, you need a top of the line expensive SSD drive. And even if you buy one, they kinda can degrade fairly quickly. So I have some Samsungs. I don't remember the exact model, but they definitely have enough bandwidth to handle 6K, whatever bitrate, stuff like that. After, let's say, single, or after I want to say single, like total drive written, I've noticed that, you know, I'm recording and then the lights goes out on the camera, and it started happening, like, you know, more often with time. And it turned out that you have to reformat the drive completely. And even with that, it can sometimes occasionally happen if you record at full transmission bandwidth, that the disk is basically not keeping up and the camera stops the recording, which sucks if I have my prompter on on lenses and I'm not seeing whether the light is on or not. So I basically started recording in 4K, and for YouTube I'm just uploading everything in full HD, 60 FPS. For the smaller camera, I kind of like the ZV. So like I said, just get something small, don't really get expensive. If you really want to get something, then just make sure the lenses are swappable, because that's the thing you might change. The ZV-E10 is cool because one, you can connect it to the PC via USB-C, and then it can act as a webcam, which is quite cool. But to be honest, I prefer the HDMI output. And I just have like this micro HDMI to full HDMI pass through. It does require you to get yourself a proper capture card. So I have like Camlink for Elgato. I don't really recommend Chinese shit because it doesn't really work with 60 FPS or something. But I guess like don't get too pricey on the camera. Right now I'm using iPhone, right, and it has pretty good cam, and I would say it's, I mean, pretty good. If you have like the one of the recent iPhones, you can basically record everything with that. Audio will be a bigger issue, and you know, video can be shitty, but audio has to be top notch. And even right now, I can see on my preview that, you know, on iPhone, I have like nice quality of colors, but on my preview of the stream, I see that everything is washed out and kinda like, you know, too bright. That's because the iPhone is actually recording HDR, and I think there is some sort of like trouble converting the color spaces for the YouTube. Not sure, but I think this is it. I have a bunch of NVMe drives and USB 4 enclosures for them. Go for it. I mean, like I said, this is just something I came across, but you know, aren't there like dedicated drives and cards for cameras? Yes, there are, and Samsung is like one of those. The drives I have from Samsung are like listed as dedicated for, you know, recording with this camera, and basically like, you know, validated that they can do everything. Still, it's like a silicon lottery. You can get like, you know, drive that performs better and drive that performs worse. So I guess that's that. Blackmagic has some capture devices. I have an Intensity Pro 4K for capture. It only does 4K 30 FPS, but I mainly use it for 1080p. I'm not really that familiar with the proper gear yet. So I basically am a bit of a scavenger at work, and you know, if you have an academic data center that has like 30 years of history, sometimes you find gear just lying around, and you know, some of that gear is unusable, trash, outdated. Because you know, I've found a lot of like video gear, but that's for analog signal processing, and you know, unusable in this day and age. But I've also found, and I can't really show it because it's in the other data center, some full-sized teleprompters that I've actually used, just lying around because the university or the institute used to have like a project where they were doing some TV transmissions or some shit. Sometimes you just find, I just scavenge stuff. I just find shit lying around and I just like make do with it. The Ceph server I built in one of the few videos back was like, you know, my colleague being like, hey, I have this 24 bay HDD server with 4 CPUs in it that I don't want anymore because it's old. Do you want to do anything with that? And I was like, sure. It's like it gobbles up a shit ton of power, so I cannot really recommend it to keep it in home lab. But I did something with it. Nice. I'll take a look at the ZV10. I think they have like version 2, V2, or maybe some other. If you like look for, you know, whatever vlog entry camera, you'll be fine. I think that you need to only decide if you want to go for Sony or Canon or whatever else in case of mounts, because Sony has Sony E mount and Canon has like whatever Canon mount. So if you have like existing lenses or stuff like that, you might want to decide whether you want to reuse them or you want to go for something else entirely. I mean, this camera has been serving me pretty well, so I mean, it also has, so this is like very cool when I'm filming by myself, so I can basically do, you know, stuff with my single hand. It's the little things that count. Oh. But like I said, the worst part about doing anything on YouTube or whatever vlogging is the microphones. And you know, having a good audio quality is, if I were to say, the single hardest thing I have to do. Because aside from having glasses, which is an absolute fucking pain when recording, audio is the very next thing. that gives me the biggest headaches. I mean, white glasses are a real problem for me because they reflect a lot of light. So I guess you can see, I mean, maybe here is a very good place for recording, but I've literally had instances where I recorded like 20 minutes of material, and you know, I was like, okay, let me see that, and my eyes were basically glowing. So I basically had to reposition everything and, you know, re-record stuff. But audio sucks. I have Shure SM7B microphone at my desk. I do too. And you know what's in my humble opinion, because I know that Shure is a golden standard for podcasts and mics and stuff like that. It is, in my opinion, difficult to master. Maybe it's not only difficult to master, it's also difficult to set up properly. And in my humble opinion, this little microphone, which is this is actually part of this is a Sennheiser microphone, right? A Thai mic, I'm not sure what it's called in English, is so fucking good and so streamlined and easy to use. So I know I have Shure. I have actually two Shures, and I have a lot of problems, but I guess that this is like also a issue on my part, because, you know, I am not really a master yet at handling that stuff, and I don't really have a lot of you know, well put audio equipment. So this is still like a learning curve for me, but I do think that this little shit is so easy for me and more streamlined to use, and I'll maybe talk about that in a second. Got to go put to sleep some Parasite I acquired a few years ago. Good talk, have to catch up soon. See ya. Yeah, thanks, Krzysztof. I promise you I'll write to you on LinkedIn or wherever, because I actually thought about that, you know, it's New Year, we have time, we can actually catch up, because we tried to, and we didn't manage last year at the very end of the year. So yeah, great talking to you, and thanks. Which one's that? Sorry, Sure. I imagine if I shot anything, I'll probably just voice over using my AT2020. I also was like thinking a lot about doing more voiceover videos, and then I found out one single thing that basically changed my approach to everything. Mainly, it's a hell of a lot easier to record yourself, just, you know, reading the script, because I script everything I do on YouTube, because I'm not native. So sometimes when I want to go deeply technical, it's difficult, right? It's better to read and, you know, stare into camera and have that recorded, because it's way more difficult to do a proper B-roll to have it fill the 100% of your voiceover. Because I tried that. My very first videos on the channel have been like that, and then I found out that it's really difficult to fill that space in the video, basically. And it's much easier if you can cut to yourself talking and then basically interlace that with some B-roll you either recorded or found on the internet. So I sometimes I wonder, because I really do like some of the faceless YouTube channels, and I am amazed at how good they are at this, like how this is unnoticed, basically. That's fair, more flexible. Yeah. By the way, about mics, this is Sennheiser, and like I said, I also have Shure the SMB. But like I said, with SMB, I have a lot of problems, and, you know, the biggest problems I have with recording audio is my mouth sounds. I'm not really saying breaths, I mean mouth sounds, like, you know, clicking and stuff like that. And, you know, even if I stand this far away, like a meter or meter and a half from Shure, it can pick up on that. And the other thing I'm doing, which maybe prevents me from actually doing a good audio quality, is that I am always trying to have audio recorded with my video, which means I am always trying to have my mic connected to a camera, which I understand is not ideal because the analog to analog converters in cameras are not ideal, right? And I do have some interfaces, especially even if I record at home. I basically have an interface in front of my PC. But then, on the other hand, I do notice that the Shure is picking up a shitload of noise, and I would basically need, I don't know, some sort of amplifier, like in line. It's so weird, and and also it's so expensive sometimes, like ridiculously expensive. But yeah, and also doing everything solo is it's difficult because sometimes you basically go and record for 20 minutes and there's nobody sitting to basically have headphones on and say, I don't know, stop. I can't hear you at all, or maybe you've done something weird with your mouth or whatever, or maybe the video got corrupted, or maybe the lights is reflecting with in your glasses. Because I can have a monitor. I have like monitor AD, like a support monitor place to position myself, catch, focus and stuff like that. But then that monitor has to be turned off because otherwise it will reflect in my glasses. It's difficult. But I also do get that people don't really come to this channel for the best produced video. It's not really the meat of the material. I just so happen to have that 6K camera that I'm just trying to utilize somehow. I also have this one, but if I have two cameras, then I can basically use that 6K to have it placed in a single room, in a single position with like lighting, etc., just configured once and then done and forgotten. And then I can have this camera to basically run around the data center and collect B-roll footage and stuff like that. I mean, sometimes I do look at YouTube tutorials for DaVinci editors, and I've noticed that there are like two types of tutorials. The one type of tutorial is, I would say, very high level, where the way you are being told how to edit, how to make cuts, stuff like that. And those are the tutorials with the most views. And I would say that they suck, because the most interesting ones are the ones that tell you about either how to use DaVinci or whatever video editor you are using to make your work as quick as possible. I mean, they show you all of the functionalities of DaVinci, like, I don't know, templates, stuff like that. But also the ones that are, I would say, very like under the radar are the ones where they show you content packs, tutorials, or like ready Fusion scripts or notes or stuff like that. Those also, from my experience, tend to fly a bit under the radar, which is weird. But I guess sometimes everybody needs the basic, very, very basic introduction first before they deep dive into actual know-hows of the field. Okay, I guess I can shut down my deep sea, at least for now. I mean, if I was at home by now, I would be probably playing something. But I cannot wait for the 50 series GPUs to become available so I can finally buy one and then play a backlog of my games on PC that actually at this point require me to buy a new card. I think at the moment I only have like Stalker 2 that completely is unplayable on my current GPU, and by completely unplayable I mean it's like, I don't know, 15 FPS, maybe 20. I do think that this is a missed opportunity on the AMD side to release their GPUs a month later. Speaking of Nvidia cards, would entertain buying one, but I need better luck to obtain one. I guess you are afraid that there will be out of stock, at least for now. Yeah, I guess that may happen. I would like to get the Founders Edition one if possible. I think, at least compared to last generation, I think they are more reasonably priced, especially the models below the 5080. We'll see. We'll see. Hard to find a decent 2-slot card that isn't Quadro or something. Yeah, I mean that, the GPUs are sometimes so enormous, and I cannot really like grasp this, because I know that ATX standard is, in a nutshell, kind of retarded, and it basically never was meant to be done in a way that it is in personal computers, right, and in desktops. But still, it's amazing that it's been so many years, and and there even hasn't been, I don't really want to say a competitor, but at least an alternative standard that would provide you some alternative airflows, or it wouldn't make it so that your GPU that is gigantic sags, drops down or whatever. It's so weird. Like the problem of an airflow within a case is so weird to me, because if you want maximum airflow, just place your motherboard on a table, and you won't be getting any better airflows than that. If you want forced airflow, like as if you want a forced airflow, then you need to have like a proper channels, right, of the airflow. And I think somebody has done that, and they've noticed that this is fucking cool, and we haven't heard from that guy ever since. I mean, maybe we did, I don't want to but it's so weird that nothing has been like even done as in, it hasn't been even like as an alternative solution to the problem. We haven't seen anything like that being at least even tried to be popularized. Same, FA is slick. I need to watch that video from Gamer Nexus where they have that guy from Nvidia explaining how did they do that. Because I think I've heard that vid like as a second monitor content, but this is an engineer thing where you actually need to pay attention. So Founders Edition would be great. I think I've already seen the cards being posted on some shops, and I am surprised, because I kind of expected that Nvidia kind of maybe shared how they done that to you cooler thing, but it seems that many other vendors still stick to the 4U thickness of a GPU of a cooler. I mean, if I look for 5080. I mean, Asus I think is doing the 2U. But I think Zotac I think is still doing 4. So it's a big chunky boy. Gainward I think is also doing 4 if I see this properly on a miniature. Interesting. Still I think we only, well, okay, so tomorrow the 50, 80 and 90 series will start like officially selling in Poland, so it will be interesting to see some shops go down offline due to the, you know, sheer amount of traffic. We'll see if they survive that. I am afraid that, you know, for the 5070 and the lower tier models there will be way more people willing to buy those, and those will like disappear quicker than those top models can. I've been playing Cyberpunk 2077 recently. Same. I am still finishing the Phantom Liberty because I've like finished Cyberpunk like, I don't know, half a year after the premiere, but I've only been playing the DLC recently. But I am doing this on my PS5. Typically I prefer playing on a console, but I do have to say that I am kinda pissed at how PS5 does the upscaling in Cyberpunk, because if you have performance mode enabled, and to be honest you have to if you want to have more than 30 FPS, then if you drive a car quickly, then you see the after images like each and every single time, like in the back of the car. I'm not even talking about like some subtle details. I'm talking about some full-blown after images. And it's not like I am, you know, screaming that I can't play this and, you know, turn this off or whatever, because, you know, I mean, you can live with that. But I am wondering why they haven't fixed that, why they haven't like upgraded that. I guess, you know, that DLSS is best supported on Nvidia cards and PS5 has AMD chipsets, so maybe that's why. I am playing it on my 12700K and RTX 3080 Ti on ATP Ultra. Yeah, I mean, if you play on Full HD or maybe the 1440p, you don't need to really upgrade your GPUs past the 30, maybe 40 generation. And I am one of those people. I don't really have 4K monitor. I would even say that, you know, Full HD is good enough for me. I think that, you know, as soon as we reached like somewhat the peak of graphics in video games, you know, another mountain started to rise, and that mountain's name is 4K RT. And I think, you know, I think they have like well thought out, rather than having well thought out like silicon or hardware performance, they have better like plans as for what's the next big thing to aim for. I have 4K monitor that does 144 Hz, also no RT. Yeah, I mean, RT is funny because, you know, in theory you should have like every ray for every pixel that you're rendering. But then I think I read somewhere that, you know, typically in RT you are using, you know, dozen rays or maybe like, you know, 20 rays per frame. And then you somehow extrapolate that, you know, to Full HD, 4K, whatever. And I was like, wow, we are nowhere near close, like 100% pure RT. And that basically got me cooled down on the technology, especially considering that we are basically at the very end of the Moore's law. So there won't be any significant, 2 times 2 performance upgrades if we keep the existing paradigm that when it comes to silicon hardware and transistors. Unless there will be like some interesting hardware or silicon revolution, I don't think we will be seeing better performances than we are seeing at the moment. I only have RT enabled for screenshots. Yeah, photo mode. Yeah. You know, me personally, if you show me RT on and RT off, I'm like, cool. Though I've heard a compelling argument for RT, mainly that for developers it makes developing the game, writing shaders, stuff like that, the graphics pipeline easier to write, to develop for. And if you, instead of like doing this hybrid of raster engine and RT, you just develop like RT based graphics engine, then it's supposedly way easier for developers to do graphics stuff. And I do think that this is maybe the way, because I think that some optimizations, if you do a fully RT based graphic engine, are just waiting to be discovered. But we'll see. I mean, there are some. I mean, I think there was like. I think like this is like a distant future, as of today, still, because changes like that do require some time. If you want to basically tell everyone that in order for everything to work, they need to completely change their graphics card, which has been a thing in the past, but right now I think it's more difficult to do. RT has been a thing for a long time. It's only because usable in real time recently. Yeah, I mean, yes. Yeah, I think RT was ever since the computer graphics dawned upon us, mainly because one of the first people that done IT and computer science were physicists, so they had this approach of okay, this works in nature like so and so, so maybe let's do exactly the same thing on a computer. And then it turned out that shit, doing this exactly as in nature requires shitload of compute. I mean, so many different things are already known, but are waiting for a proper hardware. Like quantum computing, for example. We have whole books with quantum algorithms ready, like just like that. We just do not have the actual computer yet that could do that. But if the computer comes, this is the encyclopedia of algorithms that can be run on top of that. And it's actually interesting. I think that I think I have this in most of the background of my videos. Quantum cheat sheet. You may notice it. It may be blurred because I've kind of learned how to do bokeh. But maybe you've seen that before, or maybe I posted a photo of it. It turns out that most of the quantum computers today, because there are like in traditional computing, when you have binary, you have some sort of binary operations like and logical operation, and or XOR, NAND, stuff like that. You have the same types of operations in quantum. You have like different gates that do different operation. And it's not like, and the interesting thing is that it's not that we can construct quantum computer that can do all of those different types of gates. Most often, the quantum computers that are being constructed can do 1 or 2 types of gates. And it's basically an compiler that's transforming your typical notation of an algorithm into just doing this on 2 types of gates that are actually implemented and built. This is somewhat similar to the fact that in binary, in traditional like Boolean logic, every single algorithm can be presented as a set of every single logical equation or a problem can be built as a using only NAND gates. You don't need any other gate, you only need NANDs and not ANDs, right? I'm not sure if you're hearing me properly. I wish I could text appear on the screen. Which is interesting because that means you can basically optimize everything to a single type of gate, and then your manufacturing costs lower significantly. I mean, IT and computer science is full of things like that. But you actually need to learn it, and you need to go the proper way in order to learn everything like that. It's very hard to have that sort of knowledge presented to you if you want to organize it yourself. I think that universities for the past 20-30 years have done a tremendous job of organizing computer science into a cohesive field that can be taught from start to finish. And I mean actual computer science, not just programmer course. But yeah. Okay, it's 6:30. I guess I might slowly get going and wrap up for today. I didn't really expect today to last this long, because we've been live for 3 hours. God damn. This is a proper stream. But I do actually need to leave work. So yeah, I don't think I'll try to go back to streaming every Wednesday from data center if I can, because not always I can. Sometimes I get a meeting that gets in the way. But we'll see. I'll try to keep the Datacenter Wednesday a thing. Maybe it will stick this time. I was very busy at the end of the last year. Maybe I will have some more free time that I can basically spend like that, this year. Dang, my shift is 12 hours. That sucks. I used to work on 8-hour shifts, 3 shifts a day on an IT service monitoring. I mean, one of the best days, one of the most funny days of IT work I've done, to be honest. But yeah. Okay, without further ado, I have to end this, because if I keep talking, then I won't stop ever. So thank you all for being here, thank you all for chatting, and I'll try to advertise streams with a with a heads up next time on whatever socials or whatever. So see you next time. Bye.